Joining me now, the Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation, founder and president of the National Action Network, and author of Righteous Troublemakers, Untold Stories of the Social Justice Movement in America. Christina Greer, associate professor of political science at Fordham University, and author of Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. Brendan Buck, MSNBC political analyst and former chief communications advisor for former House Speaker Paul Ryan, and Congresswoman Madeleine Dean. She sits on the House Judiciary Committee and was a House impeachment manager for Trump's second impeachment. Thank you all very much for coming to the Sunday show. I'm going to dive right in. This is an all-skate Rev. I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts about the momentous week we might be entering, one where a former president of the United States could be indicted for his illegal efforts to stay in power.
Well, what will be a momentous week shows that we have began on this downward spiral of normalizing the decay of those that we would have not only be president, but hold elected office. It would have been unthinkable just a short while ago to think that we are talking about a former president already fighting 2 indictments, and we're waiting to see, like we're at a ball game, whether he's going to get the next 2, rather than being outraged that people are supporting a man that will be going to 2, we know of, possibly 4 trials in the middle of his running for office, and if he's elected to office. I think that we need to really take a temperature check on where we are in this country, that this is even acceptable, less known something excusable.
And Congresswoman Dean, as I mentioned, you were a House impeachment manager in that second impeachment. Your thoughts about the week we're about to enter?
Well, I want to quote Charles Blow, who said the country is under an extreme stress test, and we're having more and more pressure put on us all the time because of the corruption and criminality of the former president. If you read the superseding indictment, which I know you did, it reads like a bad mob boss movie, with 2 valets essentially going through bushes and going to adjacent properties, going into audio rooms in order to discuss what the boss wants. The boss wants the server deleted. What I think in these upcoming weeks and these new indictments to come is that I hope my Republican colleagues wake up and find that enough is enough. Is there no crime that this former president commits that would outrage them?
So, Brendan, will Congresswoman Dean hear from Republican colleagues that message, or are they all in with supporting the former president?
Well, I mean, I think we've seen so far there are very few lonely voices who are willing to do it. There are a few. I think we should recognize Chris Christie and Will Hurd for doing it. But I think the bigger overall problem for all of them in the Republican Party is Donald Trump is the one defining all of this. I mean, it's happened time and time and again in these indictments. He's gotten out ahead of them. And it's not just in recent weeks. He's spent years laying groundwork to define what's going on here. And, obviously he talks about this being election interference, but he has, I think, a much more powerful slogan that works for him. It's that I'm being indicted for you. He is the martyr for a lot of people out there. And, as silly as that is, a lot of people are bought into that concept, and it becomes emotional, and it becomes really hard for any of these other candidates to jump in. Now, they absolutely should. It's absolutely absurd that they're letting him off the hook on this. And, there's a media filter situation where a lot of what Republican voters is just not the same as what a lot of other people are hearing about this situation. But until something changes, nothing is going to change. And at this point, you have to look to the other people who are running in this race, whether they're going to continue to run interference for him, or whether they're going to see, in their own self-interest at least, some reason to hold him accountable for what's taken place here. But I have pretty low expectations at this point, unfortunately.
And Christina, I would love your thoughts as well, but do you share Brendan's pessimism?
I'm always cautiously and pragmatically optimistic, but I think Brendan is right on. I mean, we have to understand that there are so many Republicans who are running and they're just feckless. I mean, Mike Pence being at the top of the list. They refuse to really call out the former president. They're so desperately afraid of him and his supporters. But I think, the martyr complex of Donald Trump has been crafted for several years. He's always the hero and the victim simultaneously. And we can't just look at his supporters. We can't just look at the spinelessness of the Republican Party, those sitting in Congress and those who are running against him. We also need to look at these donors who are consistently financing this campaign, even though he's using a lot of the money for his own legal bills. They are more than happy to support this man because in the long run, they think that they will financially benefit from him. So they don't care about the country. I think we need to expose those individuals just as much as we need to keep our foot on the gas, not only of the misdoings of Donald Trump, but we also need to make sure that, Americans who do have this filtered news cycle understand what the Biden administration is doing on their behalf and not just following the lies of the former president in his victimization tour.
Congresswoman Dean, I want to go back to the Target letter that that Donald Trump received. There was no mention in it that about a crime that he was impeached for, which was incitement of an insurrection. As a former impeachment manager in that impeachment, do you think it would be a mistake not to pursue that specific charge against Trump for insurrection? Or do you think it's possible that if and when we see this indictment, that charge will actually be in the indictment?
That's what I wonder. When you take a look at the statute that is listed in the Target letter, in it is conspiracy to defraud the United States, witness tampering, and other things. So I can't imagine that the incitement of insurrection would not fall within those parameters. But there's certainly plenty to do. And what an extraordinary charge it would be to say conspiracy. He engaged in a conspiracy to defraud the United States, which is, of course, what we absolutely witnessed. I want to pick up on something else. I picture all of this drama around the former president as a heavy, dark drapery for our country. For what we are witnessing, but contrast that with exactly what is going on. Strong and effective leadership by this administration, by Democrats in Congress, with all the bills we passed in the last 2 years, transformational dollars coming for infrastructure, unemployment, as you said in the opening, unemployment at record lows, inflation cooling. We're doing better than any other of our counterpart countries around the world in terms of inflation. What we are seeing is the contrast with this dark, heavy drapery of corruption and criminality by a former president that continues, with strong and effective leadership by the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress. Our economy is improving, and people are feeling it.
Congresswoman Dean, real quickly, and we'll be talking about the economy at the end of the show, but the effort that seems to be underway among House Republicans to, quote unquote, expunge Donald Trump's 2 impeachments, just yes or no, will they succeed in doing that?
I don't think so, and they won't have any import anyway. If you read them, they sound absolutely silly, as though it never even happened. I remember commercials that we have here for a company called ServPro, like it never even happened. We can't restore the president's failure of leadership and corrupt criminal work against the Constitution. So even if they pass, they have absolutely no power.